How did you know that you wanted to be a data scientist?
So I didn't know I wanted to be a data scientist at all when I was in school. So I was working with a professor where we're looking at
What was the motivating factor to actually did your 9 to 5 take that jump and become a full-time content creator?
I think it's definitely like the constraint of time.
So you were building something very new. Can you tell me about it?
It's so scary. I'm actually still in a very early stage. So it's actually
Do you think every data scientist should go into an entrepreneurship journey at some point in their career?
No.
Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. I'm Maddie and I'm a senior software engineer. Today we have a very special guest, Maggie, who will be talking with us about her journey in data science, quitting her 9 to 5, LinkedIn learning, and her startup. To begin, can you tell us a bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my identity is kind of a mixed match of a lot of things right now. I graduated from the University of Toronto with a double major in geography and statistics. And my first job out of school was data engineer. I worked there for about 5 months before switching into a data scientist role, which was more impactful to me. And I worked as a data scientist in tech for about 3 to 4 years. And I quit my job last year in February of 2024 to pursue content creation full time. And now I'm hungry for more. So I'm also trying to build my own startup.
That's so impressive. For my audience who might not know, what's the difference specifically between a data engineer and a data scientist?
Yeah, so, data scientist itself, it actually has a lot of different paths as well. So for me specifically, I was working more of a product data scientist where I built a lot of prototypes and there was a lot of communication involved, presenting technical insights to non-technical founder and building models, working with research scientists on the models. But data engineer is more back-end focused, where you're building a scalable pipeline. You're working more closely with probably still data scientists, but also machine learning engineer and software engineer, and the back end of like a database, data lake, of the data structure that you're working with.
Nice. And how did you know that you wanted to be a data scientist? How did you first get into it?
That's a good question. So I didn't know I wanted to be a data scientist at all when I was in school. Actually, data science is a major now. It's very common, but it wasn't an option for me at all. Back when I went to school, school was just playing catch up, the school system. So I can probably talk about my double major in statistics and geography, which a lot of people were like, oh, that's so weird. What are you going to do with that? So what I ended up getting into while I was in school is I was working with a professor in a hospital research setting where we're looking at like epidemiology, public health issues. When COVID hit, we work on a lot of like COVID data, predicting COVID spread, and also using statistics to prove that COVID is just not like any other flu, because we take into like historical data and kind of map out the fluctuation of seasonality and predict the future. And it's a lot higher than where it should be in terms of mortalities. And so that's like my very kind of first step into, I wouldn't even call that data science, but it was like more like a statistician role. And then over time, I realized that I didn't want to stay very much in academia. And if you want to continue with that role, I would have to go on to get a PhD and to be able to do that. But I really wanted to work and make an impact in people's life right away. And so B2B, B2C, I really want to be in like a tech industry right away. And that's where I kind of fell into data science. Yeah.
That's so cool. I feel like I have a lot of friends who similarly like really liked research and learning, but wanted to go into software engineering or research in a tech company or to make more impact faster.
Yeah.
'Cause I know like academia is very rewarding, but it takes a lot of like,
Takes a
long time publishing, like getting grants, all that. And there's sometimes more money in tech.
Yeah, and the impact is also like slower, I think, in a way that you spend so much time. It's very important work that they're doing, but if you are someone who wants to see your feature out there like in a week, a month, then industry is the way to go.
That's so true. Now I want to switch gears and talk about LinkedIn learning. So you were a LinkedIn learning instructor. How did you first hear about the opportunity and how did you develop your course?
Yeah, it's actually industry referral. It's about who you know. So I know someone who is also in the creator space who did a LinkedIn learning course, and I thought that was really cool. And I wanted to develop my own course as well. So she got me in contact with her content manager, which panned out to be the 3 LinkedIn learning courses that I did over the past 2 years.
Oh, wow. What are the 3 courses?
Yeah.
Names?
So the first one is on geospatial data science. It's a very hands-on geospatial project. So far, it's been like maybe 8 months and we have 7,000 learners.
Wow.
But it's more of a niche topic that I don't think a lot of people are necessarily interested in. So The last two I did was on AI. So one is on vibe coding with Cursor. It's an intro beginner friendly level course. So it's going to come out in September. Ready on LinkedIn Learning. And then the second one is another hands-on course because I'm all about impact and building practical solutions. So that one was using OpenAI's API to build a data analysis assistant in your kind of local environment.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that's so useful for so many people out there. How long does it take for you to create this LinkedIn Learning course from like idea to like actually publishing it, would you say?
Yeah. So the first course took about part-time work, 3 months, over maybe I would say 5 to 10 hours a week, more intensive towards the end. But like with AI, everything just changes so fast. So that was more like a condensed timeline where I had about a month of full-time work basically to produce the 2 courses that I did.
Wow. And I'm curious, like you mentioned the geospatial one. Do you think that your background in, you said you studied geography. And
Yeah.
Did your background in geography really help you come up with that?
Definitely. Like I actually worked in geospatial data science when I was working as data scientist. I worked in the logistics industry. So a lot of like routing packages and figuring out the algorithm behind like movement of cars and goods and people. And that's actually something I'm super passionate about. Like part of geography is urban planning. So it's just about how cities are formed and how the policy impact people. So that's something that I'm really interested in. I really identified myself with like the geospatial space. I love maps. I love mapping interactive things where you can see and touch. Yeah.
That's so cool. I wish I was better at geospatial reasoning. I'm so bad at it. So I will definitely take your course. So I know that you have this LinkedIn Learning course, which is more long form, but you also have a lot of short form educational content, for example, on Instagram and TikTok. Do you think that one is better than the other, or do you think that one draws different audience compared to the other? And then how would you rate the effectiveness of each type?
Yeah, well, I do think there are pros and cons for short form educational content and long form. Short form is like if you're commuting or if you're, maybe on the couch doing nothing, then it's a little bite pieces of educational content that can teach you something and you can learn something new in like very short amount of time. Whereas like a long form is more dedication. So if you have educational credit from your work, then like definitely if you want to scale up, for example, data scientists, you want to learn more about AI, then the long form content is going to help you a lot more in a more structured way.
So now I want to talk about your full content creation journey. You posted on all the socials and did your 9 to 5 for a very long time. What was the motivating factor to actually take that jump and become a full-time content creator?
That's a good question. I think it's definitely like the constraint of time and impact for me. So what most people don't realize, like, yes, it's very low barrier of entry to become a content creator. But once you start get the things going, you realize you have to really post consistently. You have to keep showing up. And there is a whole system and time commitment behind it. So I was basically working 2 full-time jobs during the 1-2 years that I was doing both. And I mean, the other aspect was impact. So I worked on the research team at my tech startup that I worked for. And what most people don't realize is like I kind of compare it to Google Brain or to OpenAI, ChatGPT teams, where yes, people see ChatGPT today, but there were so many other models that were shelved, so many models people worked on that never got to see the sunlight. So I did feel like we were kind of in that stage where a lot of things that worked on all of a sudden just got shelved because the company changed directions or we had different clients at the time. That was, I have to say, it was like a bit of an ego hit of what am I doing? Like what impact am I actually making people's everyday life? At the same time, my Instagram, my YouTube was taking off and I get DMs from people all the time. Oh, your content is so helpful. I got this job, and it was so heartening. Like it was such a joy to see that I can make a difference in people's life. And I was thinking to myself, what if I could put double the time into content creation? Imagine how big of impact I would make. And that was what ultimately made me quit my 9 to 5. And also I was able to save up for a year's runway, which is very important to save up at least 6 months to 1 year of runway because you're not going to succeed right away. And once everything financial is in place, I was ready to take the leap.
So true. That's awesome that you're able to do that. Something that you said really resonated with me. You're like, you have to, create so much content. Do you ever suffer from content burnout? Do you ever be like, yeah, do you ever not want to film but have to film?
Yeah, definitely. And I think I'm still very much struggling with that. And I'm still trying to learn how to balance everything. Like, yes, you want to batch content, but also sometimes it's also a creative work. So if inspiration hits, you want to be able to be spontaneous and let yourself have time to really express yourself in a way that you want. So I'm definitely still struggling with that, and creator burnout is real.
Do you have any advice, or how have you been able to mitigate it in any way?
Create a system like early on. Somebody said something about, like, there's a very important quote about system. It's like you rise up to the level of your system. So you need to, like, whether it's Notion, Google Doc, doesn't matter, notes, as long as you have a place where you feel centered, and can put, I don't know, figure out a way to be the most productive or very early on, and not just like kind of be all over the place because of the creative job. I think it's so important. That's something that I would have done differently if I had started over to start earlier.
Yeah, that's so true. I feel like for me, like haven't been posting educational content for that long, but I feel like something you don't realize about posting content is, like, even though it's creative, there are like systems to it. There are like things you can like automate and make more efficient, and just like having those little shortcuts, I think, really makes a difference in the long run for sure.
Yeah, and outsource. It's so important. I have a hard time letting go of my work because I'm like, oh, nobody's going to do it as good as I would, which is maybe true, maybe not, probably not, because there are people who specialize in things. But it's just a different mindset when you're an employee versus when you're a business owner, where, you know, you have to be able to let go and delegate stuff to be able to grow faster.
Yeah. Since you left your 9 to 5, do you think that being a content creator has helped you become a better data scientist, or do you think it's like the other way around?
Definitely yes to being a content creator makes me a better data scientist. Being a content creator definitely makes me a better data scientist in a way that we know that if you're in tech, you have to continuously upskill and keep learning, keeping up with tech. And I think being content creator, you're in the forefront of that. You cannot share news that happened 2 years ago that's outdated. So it really forced me to not be lazy and actually like read tech newsletters and keep up with industry news, trying to learn the new things. And I think it helps me definitely be a better data scientist and continue on with that learning journey.
That's a great point. I feel like, yeah, since being a tech content creator, I now like actually read tech news, actually try like the new tools and everything. And that's something that I wasn't very good at back in the day. So yeah, definitely it's ironic, but I think it really helps. And finally, I want to talk about your startup. So you are building something very new. Can you tell me about it?
Yeah, it's so scary. I'm actually still in the very early stage. I had 2 ideas just a month ago, and I only narrowed down to the one that I want to focus on very recently. And I'm very lucky to be able to work with a mentor who has built startup before on that. And so it's actually for content creators. It comes from my own pain point where, like I was just talking about, not having a system early on. I think for especially solo creators who don't have a team behind them, there are so many things that a lot of us have gone through that nobody really talks about. So I want to put them all into an app where I want to help creators to consistently grow and be able to always post content, especially with the help of AI, and have like a centralized system where you can do everything in one place and not having like 20 different softwares for different things, which I still, in a way, feel like I'm in that boat right now, trying to figure out a system. So I know I'm kind of all over the place, so it's very early. I'm trying to talk to 100 users. My mentor is like, oh, do not build until, you know, you talk to 100 people, not one person left. And I've talked to, I'd say, 10 people so far, and it has really shaped what I'm going to build. Like at the beginning, I was like, AI. Like every single investor and CEO was like, has to be AI. But now I'm starting to think that no, it sure, it can have an AI component, but really what the problem that people are having from the 10 people that I've talked to is to be able to be consistent and to be able to have a system in place.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm so excited to see what you build, because I feel like as a content creator myself, I love to use it. Do you think every data scientist should go into an entrepreneurship journey at some point in their career?
No. That's a good question though, because entrepreneurship is overhyped, but it also has like its value. Like I think because you have no ceiling, you can bet on yourself and you have no ceiling for growth and potentials. But like for data science specifically, there's like algorithm data scientists or like even research scientists who also fall in the data science umbrella, where they really, all they want to do is like maybe figuring out the algorithm. How do I make this better? How do I cut down latency for the model output? And those very specialized talent, I think if they want to continue further on like in the IC track, that's probably best, and not like necessarily you don't have to worry about all the other things that you really don't care about business building, and have somebody else worry about it. It just reminds me of a news article that I saw recently about how Mark Zuckerberg was poaching talent from everywhere. And this guy, I think he poached from somewhere else. He offered him like $1 billion or something.
He didn't take it though.
He didn't take it. Yeah, no, even $1 billion, he wouldn't take it. But like that guy has like such specialized talent that he maybe not be so successful if he was a founder or entrepreneur, but he'd be like very successful as a researcher working for a visionary like Mark Zuckerberg.
So cool. Well, yeah, thank you so much for chatting with us. I learned so many useful tips and tricks, and I can't wait to try out your creator tool when you come out with it. Where can people find you online?
Yeah, so I post content daily on my Instagram and TikTok at maggieindata. I also post content on YouTube at maggieindata every week. I try to be every week. I also have my own podcast channel. If you're interested in more non-linear career journeys, called The Time I Left My 9 to 5, where I post a weekly podcast episode with an interesting guest who has a non-linear career path and just to learn about their emotional journey and their decisions. So yeah, you can find me anywhere.
Yay! Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.